Welcome to Blackman Folktales. Kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also like and share. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell, as this means the whole world to us. The Sunday sun rose over the quiet town of Maplebrook, painting the steeple of Grace Temple in golden light. Inside the church, the choir rehearsed their harmonies while the congregation prepared for another message from Pastor Samuel Whitaker, a man known for his fiery sermons and spotless reputation. At the front pew sat his daughter, Elara, 18, graceful and composed, the perfect image of a pastor's child. Her soft hazel eyes seemed filled with innocence, her white dress modest and spotless, and her smile a portrait of peace. Everyone in town adored her. They called her the Angel of Maplebrook. But no one knew that behind that angelic glow lay a world of secrets. To the congregation she was the perfect daughter, faithful, obedient, and pure. But beneath that polished exterior, Elara lived a life that would destroy her father's ministry if ever revealed. Each time the church bell rang, her chest tightened, for it reminded her of how many lies she carried. She wasn't proud of them, but she couldn't stop. The girl everyone praised by day was a stranger to the one who came alive when night fell. Elara's double life began 2 years earlier, the night her mother passed away after a long battle with cancer. Her father had buried his grief in the pulpit, preaching harder than ever, while Elara drowned hers in silence. Her once loving home turned into a shrine of rules, perfection, and expectations. Every mistake was a sin, every tear a weakness. One night, desperate to breathe, she sneaked out of her window and walked through the dimly lit streets of downtown Maplebrook. That was the night she met Zoe, a bold, free-spirited street girl who danced to music only she could hear, her laughter echoing through the cold air. Zoe wasn't like anyone Elara had known. She wore ripped jeans, smoked clove cigarettes, and talked about life with reckless honesty. "You don't have to be perfect to be free," Zoe told her, eyes shining under the streetlights. That line haunted Elara for days. Soon the nightly walks became routine, then an addiction. By day she sat through Bible studies and youth choir meetings. By night she became Lara, a mysterious girl who roamed the streets, danced under the bridges with Zoe and her friends, and felt for the first time alive. But the more she lived between worlds, the more fragile her mask became. Every night, Elara returned before dawn, changing her clothes, washing the smell of smoke and city from her skin, and kneeling beside her bed to pray, not out of devotion but out of guilt. She knew it couldn't last forever. One evening, after youth service, Pastor Samuel called her into his office. He spoke gently but firmly, telling her that the church board was considering her for youth leader, a position that would place her directly in the spotlight. "You're a light, Elara," he said, placing a proud hand on her shoulder. "You've never disappointed me." The words pierced her like a blade. That night she didn't go home early. Instead, she found herself at an abandoned skate park with Zoe, her laughter echoing through the graffiti-painted walls. "You ever tell him who you really are?" Zoe asked, taking a drag of her cigarette. Elara didn't answer. Her silence said everything. For the first time she realized she wasn't just pretending anymore, she was two different people trapped in one body. The pastor's daughter and the street girl couldn't coexist forever. And one day one of them would have to die. The following weeks unfolded like a balancing act Elara could barely control. By morning she was the image of grace, kneeling in the front pew, harmonizing with the choir, smiling when church mothers praised her discipline and purity. But by night, she drifted through Maplebrook's forgotten corners, where neon lights replaced stained glass and music thumped louder than her heartbeat. With Zoe by her side, she discovered fragments of freedom she'd never known, painting graffiti, dancing under flickering street lamps, laughing until tears streamed down her cheeks. Yet even in those moments, guilt clung to her like smoke. Sometimes she'd pause mid-laughter, seeing her father's face in her mind, preaching about holiness, about the dangers of temptation. And then she'd look around at the world she'd chosen, the laughter, the chaos, the brokenness, and wonder who she truly belonged to. The duality was eating her alive. When Zoe introduced her to Jay, a street performer with a guitar and a smile too kind for his world, Elara's heart trembled. He saw through her fake confidence, saw the fear behind her eyes. "You don't look like you belong here," he told her softly one night. She smiled sadly. "I don't belong anywhere," she whispered, and for the first time she meant it. As days passed, Elara's deception deepened. The youth group adored her, believing her every word during Bible studies. When she prayed, people cried. When she sang, they said they felt heaven open. Yet, the more people admired her, the heavier her secrets grew. She couldn't confess, not to anyone, not to her father who would see her as a disgrace, not to the church which would turn its love into gossip. The irony of it all twisted her soul. She was guiding others toward light while walking deeper into shadows herself. One night, Jay invited her to perform at a small open mic event downtown. Against her better judgment, she agreed. She sang under the name Elara, her voice trembling at first but soon soaring with emotion. The crowd cheered, and for a moment she forgot who she was supposed to be. Jay looked at her afterward, awe in his eyes. "You were born for this," he said. But when she returned home, the sound of her father's prayers drifted down the hallway, and her chest ached. She wasn't born for the streets or for sin, yet the person she was in church no longer felt real either. That night she realized something terrifying. She didn't know who Elara Whitaker was anymore. Then came the night everything started to crumble. It was supposed to be a regular Friday youth service, but halfway through worship, Elara spotted someone at the back of the church, Jay. He stood in the shadows, eyes wide, recognizing the girl behind the halo. Panic surged through her chest. She missed her cue, her voice faltered, and the pianist glanced at her in confusion. After the service, she found Jay waiting near the church gate. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice low but trembling. "You're a pastor's daughter?" Elara's lips quivered. "You don't understand," she murmured, tears welling up. "I can't be her all the time." Jay sighed, torn between admiration and disbelief. "Then who are you?" The question lingered in the cold air. She couldn't answer. When she turned to leave, her father appeared at the church door, eyes narrowing at the sight of the stranger. In that frozen moment, Elara knew her two worlds had collided, and from here on, every secret she'd buried was inching closer to the light. The days following that night were unbearable. Her father had asked no questions, but the silence in their home was heavy enough to crush her. Every morning, he looked at her with quiet suspicion, as though he sensed something slipping from his control. Meanwhile, Jay stopped showing up downtown. Zoe said he'd left for another city, claiming he needed clarity. Elara felt the loss like a wound. Without him, the nights lost their spark. Even the streetlights seemed dimmer. She still met with Zoe, still pretended to laugh, but her heart was crumbling under the weight of what she'd built. One Sunday, Pastor Samuel preached about the masks of hypocrisy, his words slicing through her like knives. "Some wear holiness like a costume," he thundered, "but God sees the dirt beneath the fabric." The congregation shouted amen, but Elara sat frozen, trembling. It felt like he was preaching at her soul. When the service ended, she escaped to the restroom, collapsed against the wall, and sobbed until she could barely breathe. Every lie, every night she'd lived as someone else, replayed in her mind like a cruel confession. She wanted to stop. She wanted redemption. But she also feared that if she confessed, she'd destroy the man who'd raised her. Her breaking point came a week later. Zoe was gone, arrested during a street brawl, and Elara found herself wandering the streets alone, wearing her hoodie low and her pain even lower. She walked until she reached the same abandoned skate park where it all began. There, under the dim streetlight, she sang softly to herself, the same song she'd performed that night with Jay. Her voice cracked, but she didn't care. She sang through her tears until she heard footsteps. Turning, she froze. Her father stood there, his expression unreadable. "Elara," he said quietly, not with anger but with heartbreak. "How long?" The words shattered her. She fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "Since Mom died," she choked out. "I couldn't be perfect anymore. I just wanted to feel alive." For a long moment he said nothing. Then, to her shock, he sat beside her. "You think I never felt that way?" he whispered, voice trembling. "Grief broke me too, Elara. I just hid behind the pulpit." His tears glistened under the light. In that moment the masks fell, not just hers but his too. Two broken souls finally met in truth. The following Sunday, Elara did something unthinkable. She walked to the pulpit before her father's sermon and asked to speak. The congregation stirred in confusion as she stood there, her heart pounding in her chest. "I've lived two lives," she began, her voice quivering. "One for you, and one for me. And I'm done hiding." She confessed everything, her nightly escapes, her lies, her grief. Gasps filled the sanctuary. Some eyes burned with judgment, others with compassion. Her father watched from the front row, tears silently streaming down his face. When she finished, she stepped down, expecting rejection. But instead, her father rose, walked to her and embraced her tightly. "Grace," he whispered, "isn't for the perfect, it's for the broken." The congregation fell silent. Slowly, one by one, they began to applaud, not out of praise but out of awe for her honesty. That night, Elara didn't return to the streets. She sat on her porch watching the stars, feeling the weight of freedom settle in her chest. For the first time since her mother's death she felt peace, not because she was pure but because she was real. The pastor's daughter had finally laid her masks to rest, and the girl of the night had found her dawn. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as this means a lot to us.